Well, as it stands right now, the election results, as we are told, are still trickling in, quote unquote. Republicans are inching closer towards a slim majority in the House, while the Senate still hangs in the balance. The Senate races in a few key states have yet to be called now, 2 days later. Why is it taking this long? I mean, how is it that a state in a modern and allegedly advanced country could take 2 days to count its ballots and still not be finished? How do we explain a state that has 60% counted of its votes, and then you check back 18 hours later and they've counted 75% of their votes? How could this slow pace possibly be justified, especially when states like Florida, with far more ballots to count, managed to get them all tallied in like 5 hours? Well, it makes sense once you understand the process. And I think a lot of people don't understand the process. There's a lot of misinformation. So in Arizona, for example, takes a long time in Arizona. Well, what happens is each individual ballot has to be ferried up a mountainside on the back of a goat and delivered to a magical oracle who's sitting in a cave, who then communicates the results via a chain of smoke signals, which eventually get back to the election office, which then, after any necessary corrections are made, of course, sends the tally to CNN by carrier pigeon. So that's the system, and it's quite standard. I mean, how else are they supposed to do it? Can you think of a better one? At least that's the most encouraging theory that I can come up with, because the more likely explanation is that they take so long because they want to take so long, and there is no good reason why they could want that. I mean, there are reasons why they could want it, but no good ones. They don't fix the system because, for their purpose, the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as they prefer according to their purposes. Yet, even as we wait for the mountaintop oracle to give us the final results, we can still arrive at certain conclusions about the state of our country and our culture, and none of them are all that encouraging, I'm afraid. So take Montana referendum number 131. The results here, too, are still being tabulated somehow, but with 90% reporting or so, it looks certain that the referendum is going to fail in Montana. Nearly 250,000 residents voted against the referendum, with about 200,000 voting for it. What does the referendum seek to accomplish? Well, it is supposed to guarantee medical treatment for infants born alive after a botched abortion. So to be clear, a majority of voters in Montana do not want to give life-saving medical treatment to a born infant outside of the mother's womb. They voted in favor of leaving the child to die horrifically and painfully. Now, there are some generous souls out there who want to make excuses for these voters, claiming the referendum was worded in a confusing way. And that can be a problem, certainly, and has been in the past with, there's a referendum and then you look at the way it's worded and it's hard. In fact, we had one of those a couple months ago we were looking at, and it's hard to tell what they're asking you. But you tell me if you're confused by this. Here's the actual language. Here's the question that appeared on the ballot in Montana. This is what it said. An act adopting the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, providing that infants born alive, including infants born alive after an abortion, are legal persons, requiring healthcare providers to take necessary actions to preserve the life of a born alive infant, providing a penalty, providing that the proposed act be submitted to qualified electors of Montana, and providing an effective date. And then the voters were invited to vote either yes, approving the referendum, or no, to rejecting it. These are the statements. It's an act providing legal protection to infants born alive, yes or no. I can't see how anyone could possibly be confused by that. Again, an act to provide legal status to infants born alive after an abortion. Yes, you want to give them that status and thus save their lives, or no, you don't. And if you say no, as it clearly indicates in the wording, you are voting to deny legal protections to born infant children. A majority of voters in Montana, okay, not typically considered a bastion of far-left activism, voted to deny those protections to children. We can comfort ourselves with the desperate hope that these Montana voters are just incredibly stupid rather than incredibly evil, but I think that would be a false hope. In fact, abortion and infanticide won on the ballot all across the country, in red states and blue states. Voters from Montana to Kentucky to more expected places like Michigan and California voted, often by considerable margins, to deny any legal protections to children born and unborn. That's the fact of the matter. It's not fun to consider, but it is a fact all the same. There is definitely, we cannot deny, a candidate quality problem in the Republican Party, but there is also, I'm afraid to say, a voter quality problem. Well, if you feel like you still aren't getting the respect you deserve in your life, established titles is the way to go. It's your way and opportunity to earn the title of Lord or Lady and gain the respect that you deserve. All you need is a 1 square foot plot of land in Scotland. Established Titles is a project based on a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds or lords and ladies in English. In your title pack, you will be bestowed with at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Eddleston, Scotland, plus an official certificate, as you can see that I have here, with a crest that comes with it. Your certificate features a unique plot number with which you can see the exact location of your plot. Title packs from Established Titles are a fun and unique gift for any occasion. There are even couple packs that come with adjoining plots of land for that special someone in your life. With your certificate, you can officially add the prefix of Lord or Lady to your credit cards, your plane ticket, and even your dating profile. Established Titles told me that the first 200 people to purchase a title pack using my exclusive link will receive a plot within walking distance of mine. So depending on how many people sign up, we could become our own kingdom. Established Titles is actually running a massive sale right now, and if you use the code Walsh at checkout, you'll get an additional 10% off. So go to establishedtitles.com/Walsh to get your gifts now and help support the channel. Now, the results of these referendums and of the races themselves can largely be explained by and blamed on, I suppose, two often overlapping groups, and that would be Gen Z and unmarried women. Now, it's been widely discussed and comes as a no surprise to no one, I assume, that Democrats won the Gen Z vote by about 2-1. But the unmarried woman factor is, I think, most notable. As the Daily Wire reports, quote, unmarried women voted Democrat in the 2022 midterm elections by a significant margin, according to exit poll data. Compared to married individuals favoring GOP candidates this year, a CNN exit poll of 18,571 total respondents found 68% of single women marked their ballots for Democratic politicians, a 37-point margin over the Republican Party. Republicans gained 20% more votes from married men than Democrats, while single men voted 7% more for GOP figures. We should also note, importantly, that Republicans won the married woman vote by 14 points. So Republicans win clear majorities of the married vote and still a slim majority of the unmarried man vote. But unmarried women swing heavily to Democrats. Based on this, we can also assume that they are largely responsible for these ballot measures enshrining abortion and infanticide across the country. I mean, that's why these measures passed or didn't pass, as the case may be. The good news for Democrats is that the number of unmarried women in the country continues to increase year over year. In the middle of the previous century, so around 1940, 1950, a vast majority of the households in the country, 80% or so, were comprised of married couples and families. They were led by married couples or families, 80%. That number fell to around half by the end of the century. So around 2000, we were about 50% of households were led by married couples. And within a decade after that, around 2010, it fell to less than half. So now a majority of households are not led by married couples. And this is a first in recorded history. And the trend continues rapidly in that direction every year. This is very bad news for children, and not just because unmarried people are more likely to vote to strip children of basic legal protections, but also because the children born to these unmarried people, remember, we're talking about unmarried people, not necessarily childless people, not exclusively childless. So any children born to these unmarried people, by every conceivable measure, face greater obstacles. Okay, they'll have a worse time of it. They will fare worse. Children born to single parents are far more likely to have behavior problems, far more likely to have academic problems, far more likely to drop out of school, far more likely to get expelled, far more likely to end up in prison, far more likely to end up on drugs, far more likely to end up homeless, far more likely to fall victim to violent crime, on and on and on. It is extremely bad for children and for society to abandon marriage. That's just the fact. But as is so often the case, what is bad for kids and bad for the culture is really good for the Democrats. The Democrat Party is a vulture. It feasts on the carcass of decaying civilizations. Now, it's easy to see why the Democrat Party is determined then to undermine marriage and destroy the nuclear family. You can see why the left is openly hostile to the nuclear family, why they have declared war against it. The nuclear family, led by a man and woman bonded in marriage, serves as a blockade, a fortress, standing against the left's political and cultural aspirations. They know they can't achieve their ultimate ends without blowing up the fortress, and that's what they've set out to do, and they're already having, enormous success, and they're reaping enormous political rewards in the process. Now, why do unmarried people, especially women, tend to favor Democrats? That's obvious enough. Marriage and family life will tend to make you less selfish, tend to make you less obsessively focused on your own desires, tend to make you more invested in the future, more grounded, right? In a word, more conservative. Selfish, shallow people will naturally find leftism more appealing, and they're also more susceptible to manipulation. What's more, when you're single, you're more vulnerable, and thus more likely to be dependent on the government. Democrats know this, which is one of the primary reasons they oppose the nuclear family. Nuclear families need less from the government, typically, and therefore are harder to control. The more reliant you are on the government, the more you can be controlled. The easier it is for the Democrats to extract your vote. Unmarried women in particular, if they're sexually active, are going to be more likely. The Democrats can get their vote, manipulate them, use emotional blackmail to get their vote with the abortion issue, because they're more vulnerable. And because they're not married, if they have a kid, they're more likely to see it as a crisis, because they're not married. Now, when you're married, and there are still married couples that get abortions, which is hideously evil, of course, but if you're married and you have a kid, you're less likely to see it as a crisis because you're married and you have a family, and that's what the marriage, this is what that's all about. So what does this mean? It means, of course, that our political problem is first a cultural problem. And there is no solving the former without addressing the latter. And there is no addressing the latter if we're going to neglect marriage and the family. For decades, conservatives have looked for ways to win the political game without winning the cultural game. And they're looking for ways to win the culture then without defending and encouraging marriage and the family. And it just doesn't work. It can't. It never will. If we want the cultural victory, and thus the political victory, our message should be: get married, have kids, stay married. Get married, have kids, stay married. In that order. That's the 3-step process. Get married, have kids, stay married. If more people follow that, yes, Republicans will win many more elections. If we were still at 80% married households, then Republicans would never lose a national election again. But more importantly, we will have saved our culture from annihilation. And more important still, people will be living purposeful, joyful lives, which ultimately is the end result that the Democrats are most desperate to avoid. And that'll do it for us for this portion of the show as we move over to the members block. Hope to see you there. If not, talk to you tomorrow. Godspeed.